الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. The tribe of Bani Taym, which is a sub-tribe of Quraysh, is known by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. When you mention Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, you're mentioning his tribe, Bani Taym, the clan of Taym. وكل قبيلة من أو كل فرع من فروع قريش إلا ضرب به المثل في أمر ما، وبنو تيم يضرب بهم المثل في السخاء والجود. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and his tribe were known for their excessive generosity. And this is why you will find that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, as the Prophet ﷺ praised him, and he says, two things Abu Bakr as-Siddiq I cannot pay him for: his undying support and believing in me when everybody denied al-Islam, when everybody, he says, hesitated whenever I approached him about al-Islam, except Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Khadija radiallahu anha and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq have these two in common. Both of them supported the Prophet ﷺ financially, supported the da'wah. They also immediately, without any hesitation, both of them embraced al-Islam. لكن قبيلة تيم في الجاهلية تعرف برجل عظيم ضرب به كذلك المثل في السخاء والجود. Banu Taym was known prior to al-Islam by another figure who is excessively known for his generosity that surpassed anybody in the past. He used to literally set tables and tables of food for people who come for Umrah and Hajj. And he was a very successful businessman. If you go to his shop, people will come to his shop, he will not get paid for anything during the season. Take whatever you want and you can go. This is a man by the name وهو عبد الله ibn Jud'an. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting with Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Aisha is the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Abdullah ibn Jud'an is from the same tribe, the same lineage, known for their generosity. Aisha radiallahu anha inherited that trait from her father. She was so generous, radiallahu ta'ala anha wa arda. She was known for her generosity, taking it after her father, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. فسألت النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عن عبد الله بن جذعان, because this man died way before Islam. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, what would his place be? Would he be known or recognized for his generosity by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, no. He says, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, لأنه لم يقل يوما رب اغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين. He says, because never did he turn to Allah ta'ala and says, oh Allah, forgive me for my shortcomings and for my sins, comes the day of judgment. الأعمال إنما هي بمقاصدها. Whatever it is that we do, whatever it is that we say, it has to have an objective, and the objective has to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. This is why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he says من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا, إيش معنى إيمانا واحتسابا؟ أن يكون القصد من هذه العبادات وجه الله تعالى، أي أن يكون القصد من ورائها ابتغاء الجزاء والثواب من الله تعالى لا من غيره. The intent and the aim and the objective is to seek the reward solely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Iman and Wahda, you believe. Why are you fasting? Why are you fasting? Are you fasting because the whole community is fasting, because your parents are fasting, because this is what people do during the month of Ramadan? So you're following the crowd because that's an intention. Or are you doing it because it is a form of worship through which I draw myself, first of all, closer to Allah. Two, I'm awaiting and I intend and I want and I pray for the reward solely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through fasting, through Quran, through Qiyam, through sacrifices, through Sadaqah. Everything I do it intentionally for that sake, and that is, I wanted the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reward of it in this world as well as in the next. Iman and wahtisaba. With it comes the reward that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive all the previous sins. بَدَلَ أَنْ يَكُونَ الْإِنسان, instead of doing whatever it is you do, just going through motions. Just because everybody's doing it, you do the same. Or because it's the tradition. So in other words, this is what is known as the letter of the guidance versus the spirit of the guidance. Everything has like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The letter of the law is do's and the do nots. But then again, if you are doing just following the literally you're going through motions of just fasting, but then again you take the spirit of the fasting out, meaning you don't really fortify and beautify your fasting with beautiful character, with patience, with holding the tongue from that which would ruin and nullify your fast, with bad behavior, with engaging in any of the acts that would render it null and void. This is what beautifies fasting, what beautifies the month of Ramadan, what beautifies all of the efforts you put into the month of Ramadan, whether that is with Qiyam, when you become intentional, then everything is going to take a beautiful taste in your heart. Second, you will have the energy to really be consistent with it, because every single day it leads you to a beautiful stage for the next day and the next night and the next act of worship that you do, instead of going through motions. ذكر أن, and this is very important, ikhwani. One of the scholars, subhanallah, had a parakeet. A parakeet is babgha. It's a bird, and whatever you teach that bird will really, you will keep repeating it. So subhanallah, he taught that bird to say La ilaha illallah. And sure enough, the bird keeps saying La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. And he says one day, the Sheikh was in his library reading, and all of a sudden he heard the bird screaming instead of the repeated La ilaha illallah throughout the day. Now the bird is screaming. And he found that the neighbor's cat got into the house and attacked the bird. And instead of the bird saying La ilaha illallah, as the bird is dying, it defaulted back to its original screaming, meaning La ilaha illallah was not part of what that bird knew value of. And we don't want to be like that parakeet. We don't want to be like that bird that repeats and goes through motions of things without really knowing the value of what we do. Instead, we want to fast so it lead us to a higher place and a closer station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whenever you become intentional rather, subhanallah, the sacrifices become easy. Very easy. Why? Because not only does the sacrifice have a taste in your heart, a sweetness, but also you are awaiting that reward with patience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any hesitation. And the sacrifice becomes easy. One of the scholars was a businessman at the same time. Dies and left his wife and son and left him some money. And subhanallah, the mother was careful about raising her son following the footsteps of his father in righteousness and in knowledge. However, the son was not a business kind, he does not have the business side of running business along with seeking knowledge, but he was focusing more just on knowledge without any source of income. It came to a point, subhanallah, that he got into a financial strain to the point that he was forced to even sell his own, the house of his own father just so he can survive. Came out of the house, he went to a friend of his who had a shop. It was a businessman. So he told him, I wanted to sell the house and here's my plight. Can you help? He says to him, I look into it, but in the meantime, we're talking at a point of even no food in the house for his kids and family. But he says, here's some bread and then here's some food. Take it to your family and we'll look into, inshallah ta'ala, selling your house. The man, as his way back to the house, he came across a lady with an orphan baby. Smelling the food, they were staring sharply at the food, subhanallah, and he gave him the food instead. And then went around town. Instead of going home, not having anything, empty-handed, he comes across the merchant, his friend, and he says, you're still wandering in the streets? He says, you have some guests at home. He says, guests? I don't know of any guests. He says, well, there is a lot of them, not just one or two. There's a lot of them, and there is a caravan standing by your house of merchants. And everybody thinking that is a merchandise coming into the market, and that's why all the merchants went soliciting that caravan. The man rushed back to the house, and they asked, are you the son of so-and-so? He says, yes. He says, all of this caravan is yours. This is money that your father 30 years ago had invested with us across in Khurasan, way from home. And this incident happened in Iraq. And he says, this is his investment, and this is your share from that investment that your father has invested 30 years back. And subhanallah, that night he saw in a dream. This is very important for us to pay attention to. First of all, he got scared of all of this wealth coming to him all at once. One would probably be rejoicing. Here it is. This is the solution for my plight, financial strain. Granted, it is. But at the same time, it is from somebody who is looking at the perspective of money can also be a source of fitna. At night, he saw in his dream as if it is al-Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had the angels called to bring forth all of his sins, and they were put on one side of the scale. And then comes all of his hasanat one by one to offset the sins one by one. And he has his heart on his down scared about the outcome. And he says, up until all of his hasanat are put on the other side of the scale, and then here goes all the hasanat, the good deed and bad deed, are evened out. The angels keep looking, does he have anything else? And they said he only has one meal, and that is food that he donated. That food, the reward of it was brought in and put on his scale of hasanat, and it offset all of his sins. When all of the good deeds were shown to the person, when he flips salah, and he turns also hajj, umrah, all of those good deeds that a person was banking on as good deeds, when he turns them around, he found that they had many faults in them. Many things that are really corrupting those good deeds, except that one that was sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. In other words, ikhwani, the intention, what is in mind, to keep it to be in mind all the time, is to always aim for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, and do not hesitate when the opportunity of doing good comes. It does not come randomly or by accident. It is literally directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to land at your doorsteps. Do not turn it away. Whatever good deed that is, take advantage of it and have it deposited for Allah ta'ala's sake with Allah. You will see the reward in this world as well as in the next. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرزقنا وإياكم العلم النافع والعمل الصالح وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين.